Hello Internet. Today's how-to video is going to be about setting up TFTP FTP server to back up router configurations. I recently worked on a project where I needed to set up such server in a closed environment, and I picked up FreeBSD as an operating system because it kind of has everything built in. So we gonna head to FreeBSD website and click on download FreeBSD, and I'm going to pick AMD 64 image. You can pick whichever image fits your architecture, and I will download the disk 1 image ISO. It has everything we need without internet access, unlike boot-only image that will require internet access, which we do not have because it's a closed environment. So I already created a virtual machine with that downloaded ISO. So I'm going to start the installation. I'll just use default key map, and we're going to call this server backup server. Not going to need any of these optional components. We're just going to use UFS file system, their disk, and there we go. So we're going to use super secure password for the root account. I'm going to configure IP address. We're not going to use DHCP. I'm going to use 24-bit subnet mask. I'm not going to bother with default router since I'm on the same subnet with the router that I'm going to be backing up. And we're not going to bother with IP version 6. And we're not going to bother with DNS. Eastern time is good. Now we're going to keep SSH daemon. Normally I would enable NTP time clock synchronization to make sure our timestamps for the backups are correct. But since I'm in a closed environment and I don't have NTP, I'm going to leave these options unchecked. We're not going to bother with system hardening. That will be a topic for another video. And we're going to use one non-admin user. We'll call him user. With, again, super secure password. Thing looks good. We're not going to add any more users. And this complete our FreeBSD installation. So we'll wait for it to reboot. So before we enable TFTP and FTP servers, I'm going to log in as user and just create a couple of directories where we would drop our configuration backups. So I'm going to make one directory called TFTP, So this directory will keep files backed up over TFTP, and I'm going to make another directory aptly named FTP where we back up configs using that protocol. So now I'm going to go back to root account. I mean, we can set up do as or sudo so that the non-admin can do all these things, but I'm just not going to bother with it right now for the sake of the demonstration. So the first thing we need to do, we need to configure TFTPD parameters in a dconf file. So you can see here, here's the line that specifies parameters for the TFTP daemon. So I'm going to copy it so that I can always see, you know, what changes are made if I want to ever go back for whatever reason. So we're going to tweak some options here. So by default, TFTP daemons runs as nobody, but I prefer actually to run it as user. So I'm going to specify username, which would be user. And another really nifty option is capital W. It does two things. It allows write requests to create new files, and it also appends like a date and a sequence number to the end of the file, which is kind of nifty if you're doing regular backups. It just automatically puts in a date and a sequence number and its name. And lastly, we're gonna change the backup directory to the one we just created on the user account. So it would be home user TFTP. Oops, there we go. So, and now we need to enable initd and the FTPD in the rcconf. So we're going to rcconf. My goodness, I cannot type today. rcconf. And let's see. Oh, we can add it here. So we enable initd underscore enable equals yes. And then we will also enable FTP daemon here. FTP enable equals yes. And that completes that. I mean, I can use service command to start these daemons, but I'm just going to reboot. And we can also watch if these daemons will start at boot. And as you can see, both NAD and FTPD just started. So I'm going to log into my user account. And we're going to connect to the router. And I'm going to use Telnet because it's such an old router, it does not support Secure Shell. But for the purposes of this demonstration, it's really not important. And the router is configured with a super secure Telnet password Cisco. And enable password is also Cisco. So now we're going to copy running config. Let's do TFTP first. We're going to do TFTP. And we're going to specify the server name, server IP. We use default config. these older routers, it takes a long time for some reason. And I'm gonna do it again. And so we just backed up configuration twice. Yeah, for some reason we're getting these messages from the TFTP daemon. Probably has to do with TFTP handshakes with the router. So nothing to worry about here. So before we back up configuration over FTP, we need to set up username and password for the FTP server on the router so it knows how to log in. So those are done with IPFTP commands. So you can see IPFTP username. That would be the username of the server account. User and IPFTP password would be password. So, and the reason for FTP backups, I ran into situations when it was a large download, not the router configuration, but iOS, which kept failing over TFTP. But as soon as I switched to FTP, it worked. So it's sometimes handy to be able to do it over FTP. So now we do copy, run to FTP, and we specify the IP address of the server, and I'm going to specify directory that we created for FTP backups. Cisco router config. And it takes a little while. On the new hardware, it'd probably be much faster. So there you go. So now we can go back to the server, and we can go back to the TFTP directory. And so these are the two configs that I backed up over TFTP protocol. You can see it added today's date and the sequence number, which is pretty nifty. And here's the router configuration. And if I go, let me just clear the screen. If I go to the FTP directory, here's the configuration backed up over FTP. And there you have it. This is the very quick and easy way to set up TFTP and FTP server on FreeBSD image to back up your stuff. Have a great day.